So, Starfield is a damn big game with a boatload of content in it, which means there is a lot you've got to learn to be able to make the most of the game and to not have a hard time. Now, I'll admit I didn't have the best start to life in Starfield, but not to worry, it's now going very well. So I've decided to create this video going over those things that I wish I knew sooner to have had a better start. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get stuck in. Now, as you may know, Bethesda games, there is a lot of looting, and I'd probably class myself as a little bit of a hoarder, and I can never decide what I should keep and what I should either chuck or sell. But it did take me far too long to realise that in the lodge, there is an infinite storage chest where you can store literally anything you want in it, which isn't how storage works anywhere else in the game. Now, you do need to travel back to the lodge to get access to that stuff that you've lobbed in there, but it's a great start for storing resources because it's a literal black hole for storage. Here are a couple of small but handy quick tips, and the first one is if you're low on health and aid, just find a nearby bed and then take a nap. You will need to kill all nearby enemies, but if you do it for long enough, you'll be back to full health, and on top of that, you'll get a well-rested XP bonus for a short amount of time. This works really well early in the game when combat can be quite tough. So when you're raiding various locations, there'll often be a bed somewhere around, so you don't need to use up your med packs every 2 minutes by fighting your way through. Another small but quick and useful tip is if you're out flying in space and you hold the menu button down for a second or two, it will automatically open up the star map for you, so you don't have to go through the menus to get there. Now, it's no secret that Starfield has plenty of fast travel in it, but what I didn't know initially was that if you open up your scanner whilst looking at a planet from space, you can fast travel straight down to various points of interest, and this also works when you're on foot. So say when you're out exploring New Atlantis or another planet and you want to get back to your ship quickly, just open your scanner, look for your ship, and then get yourself right over there in no time at all. Who doesn't love saving time, right? Now, if you play the game in first person like myself, it took me an annoyingly long time to realise that if you're behind cover when in combat, if you aim down your weapon, you'll pop out a little from cover to shoot either over the top or out to the side. It makes tricky combat situations just that little bit easier. Now, if you like going around exploring planets, you'll probably know it's not the quickest way because Bethesda for some reason decided they don't want land vehicles in the game. So, to combat this, well, at least slightly, always carry some amp around because when you consume it, it will let you move around a little quicker for a short amount of time, thus making walking from one point of interest to another not take years and years and years. Now, there is a lot to buy in Starfield, but it's important you know what things you should actually be spending money on and what you should be avoiding. Like, I would not bother spending money on ammo as it can get incredibly expensive quickly and you will blast through a huge chunk of it in no time at all in most combat situations. So, to combat that, just pick it up when you're exploring and defeating various enemies. Now, personally, I also think buying apartments is relatively pointless. I mean, sure, they look good, but that's about as far as it goes. Now, if you're struggling to steal a great pirate ship, you can buy a good ship, but it will cost you, so be wary. It may be better looking for those pirate ships. And speaking of ships, upgrading your ship's jump distance, weapons and shields are absolutely essential because you won't be able to loot those anywhere. Spend money on that and not apartments. Next up, did you know you can grab resources from asteroids? Yep, so the game doesn't actually tell you this, but similarly to No Man's Sky, if you shoot asteroids, they'll leave behind a mineral deposit of some form. And then you can go close enough, you can collect it. So, stuff like iron or water. Saves you time wandering around on the planet for it, right? Now, speaking of resources, but this time when you're on foot, did you know if you aim your cutter to resources, it vastly increases the speed in which you mine them? Now, I have no idea why it's much quicker if you aim versus hip fire, so to speak, but it does. So aim your cutter, people. Now, moving on to Persuasion, you should be upgrading that skill as soon as possible because a lot of the time you can avoid conflicts and avoid blowing through precious resources early on. So, ammo and med packs basically, just by getting them to stand down and manipulate them in some way. And another thing that helps around persuasion is to actually get a little bit drunk when you're about to persuade someone to do something or stand down. So keep a few bottles of things like wine, beer, spirits, or whatever else you find that gives you a temporary persuasion bonus. Another skill worth upgrading early on is the lockpicking skill. Bethesda do love a good lockpicking challenge, and the more you level up this skill, the better loot you'll be getting from more difficult locks. Or you'll find easier routes through quests. Even better is a digital lockpicking skill which covers both physical and those on computers, so get them upgraded ASAP as well. Now, I would advise you to stick with the main story for a couple of hours when you're starting out. Now, I don't mean just power through it to finish it as soon as possible, but definitely progress it through a good amount before veering off on the side stuff. Because not only are the quests actually good, but you'll unlock some extra things along the way which are worth having. Not to mention, some of this stuff will be really useful for some of the side quests, which in themselves are awesome by the way, so make sure you actually do them. If I were to suggest a point to do the story up to, I would suggest getting to Into the Unknown. Now I won't tell you why, because spoilers, but if you get that far, then you can perhaps wander off the critical path and do some of the side stuff. Now, if you're a little bit of a hoarder like myself, it's worth noting that a few essential items don't actually weigh anything in your inventory. So you can collect them until the cows come home, and those things are things like ammo, med packs, and digipicks. So you may not have a weapon that uses that specific ammo just yet, but it won't be long before you do. So I suggest picking it up and then figuring out getting that specific weapon later on, because it's not going to impact you in any way. One thing that took me far too long to realise was that I was walking around in my spacesuit and helmet all the time, even when I didn't need to. I even had people in the game saying I don't need to wear that in this specific location, but you can actually automatically show and hide your spacesuit and helmet when walking around settlements and other places. Just go to your inventory for spacesuits or helmets and tap RB on Xbox, so you'll walk around with whatever is active in your attire submenu instead. Now, upgrading or buying ships in Starfield is really great, and you can make some truly unique ships. Or if you have a spare few 100,000 credits, you can just buy a ready-made one, but there is a far better way of getting a better and more valuable ship, and it's pretty simple really. You just need to steal it from pirates. So, whilst you can do this in space by killing their engines and boarding them, a better way of doing this is waiting for them to land on the surface of the planet, which can happen literally anywhere. All you need to do is then trek on over to it, and if it's a pirate ship, you can board it, kill the crew, and then take off on the ship. You will need piloting skills B or C, and then you can bring the ship to, say, New Atlantis and get arrested. Yes, you'll be getting arrested doing this because of the contraband, but once you've paid a small fee, you can then go to ship services and pay to register that ship. And there you have it, you've just saved yourself hundreds of thousands of credits for a top of the range ship. And you can scan these ships from afar as well to see what class they actually are. So, as with tradition in Bethesda games, you can literally loot almost anything, ranging from things like toilet roll to super rare weapons. So it's important you're not picking up worthless stuff, especially early on when you can't actually carry that much. Now, personally, I've got to the point where I don't pick up weapons from fallen enemies unless they're purple or gold in rarity. They'll take up a lot of carry capacity and they won't be worth that much to sell on. Not to mention most vendors run out of cash quickly. And when it comes to armor, don't bother looting that either. And I'll tell you why just a second. So, really early on in the game, you can get a great armor set for the early game entirely for free. So, you know in the lodge, well, if you head on downstairs, similar to where the unlimited storage box is, if you have a look around in one of the side rooms in the corner, you will see there is an armor in a glass case. That it happens to be behind a lock. Now, don't worry if it says you can't unlock this, as you don't have the required skill, because you can in fact get it easily without unlocking the case at all. You just need to aim your camera when you're in first person mode at this specific point, and then you can pull it out like magic. Now, I'm not sure if this will get updated soon, so be quick with this one. And there is also another way to get a great armor set early on, and an even better ship for free as well. But this one does have a bit more of a challenge. So, in the second mission in the game, titled The Old Neighborhood, you need to make sure you loot a secret outpost note off a spacer's corpse. And this will then add that Mantis mission to your list of quests. Now, I would recommend you level up your character a little bit beyond the second mission and get some better weapons before you take on the Mantis questline, because it does provide quite a challenge early on. Now, I'm not going to do a full walkthrough of the entire thing, but once you've reached the Mantis' lair and defeated all of the other enemies, you'll be getting your hands on the Mantis armor and the Mantis ship for free, and they're pretty damn good for the early game, so make sure you do that quest. And there you have it, folks. There are a bunch of tips I wish I knew sooner when starting out in Starfield. I hope you found these useful, and if you have any other tips you'd wish you'd known earlier in the game that I haven't included in this video, why don't you leave a comment saying what that is. And if you're still here, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can now also become a channel member as well. And finally, as always, thank you for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.